At exactly 6:14 hours on a Tuesday morning in the Strait of Hormuz, the most strategically critical 21 miles of ocean on the planet, 83 Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps fast attack boats ignited their engines simultaneously and began moving at attack speed toward a United States Navy amphibious warship. No warning, no radio contact, no diplomatic signal. Just 83 hulls cutting through the water at 45 knots, and a single American warship standing between them and the complete shutdown of global energy traffic. What happened in the next 4 hours and 11 minutes did not make front-page news. It was not announced at a Pentagon press briefing. No admiral went on television. But inside the combat information centers of 3 U.S. Navy warships, a battle was fought and won with such cold, precise, devastating efficiency that Iranian naval commanders would spend the next 6 weeks trying to understand exactly what hit them. This is the full story. Stay with me, because this is going to get intense. Before we go any further, you need to understand exactly where this happened and why it matters. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow choke point between Iran to the north and Oman and the United Arab Emirates to the south. At its narrowest point, just 21 miles wide. Through this single corridor flows approximately 20% of the world's total oil supply. Every single day, between 15 and 17 oil tankers pass through this strait. Liquefied natural gas carriers, cargo vessels, commercial shipping. If you close the Strait of Hormuz, even for 72 hours, global oil prices spike. Stock markets respond. NATO allies in Europe and Asia feel the pressure immediately. Iran knows this. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the IRGCN, has spent 20 years developing a single doctrine specifically designed to exploit this geography. They call it asymmetric swarm warfare. Concept is simple and brutally effective in theory. Deploy overwhelming numbers of small, fast, expendable attack craft in a coordinated swarm pattern. Each boat is armed, RPGs, heavy machine guns, recoilless rifles, and in the most dangerous variants, Iranian-manufactured anti-ship missiles. Individually, each boat is not a serious threat to a U.S. Navy warship, but 83 of them, moving in coordinated attack vectors, closing simultaneously from multiple compass bearings, that is a different problem entirely. And on this particular morning, Iran had decided to make it America's problem. The primary target of the Iranian operation was USS Bataan, hull classification LHD-5, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship. Let me give you the picture. USS Bataan is not a small vessel. She is 844 feet long. She displaces 40,500 tons when fully loaded. She carries a full complement of Marines, AV-8B Harrier jump jets, MV-22 Osprey tiltrotor aircraft, CH-53E Super Stallion heavy-lift helicopters, and a full well deck capable of launching landing craft and amphibious vehicles. She is, in essence, a floating military base, capable of projecting power ashore, delivering Marines to a beachhead, and operating as a command and control hub for an entire amphibious ready group. But she is not a carrier strike group. And here is what the Iranians understood, and what they were betting on. An amphibious assault ship like Bataan has a defensive capability, but it is not optimized for independent surface warfare. Her escort package on this particular transit consisted of USS Arleigh Burke, DDG-51, the lead ship of the most successful guided missile destroyer class ever built, and USS Mahan, DDG-72, another Burke-class destroyer operating on the southern picket line. 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz, with 83 Iranian fast attack boats now forming up into assault positions. Iran had done the math, or so they thought. At 05:58 hours, 16 minutes before the swarm launched, USS Arleigh Burke's AN/SPY-6V air and missile defense radar had already begun picking up anomalous surface contacts. The SPY-6 is not simply a radar system. It is the most advanced integrated air and missile defense radar ever deployed on a surface combatant. Its sensitivity is so extreme that it can detect and track a basketball-sized object from over 100 nautical miles away. It sees everything. The system's automated contact management software began flagging the surface picture at 06:01 hours, 13 minutes before the IRGCN boats even moved. The AI-assisted tracking algorithms identified unusual clustering patterns among small surface contacts in Iranian territorial waters near Bandar Abbas and Qeshm Island. 17 contacts, then 31. Then, by 0607 hours, 56 distinct radar returns, all of them small, fast-moving, and forming into what the system's threat assessment module classified as a coordinated surface attack formation. On the bridge of USS Arleigh Burke, the combat systems officer stared at his display and picked up the internal comm. Captain 2 CIC, now. At exactly 0614 hours, the Iranian swarm crossed out of territorial waters and went to attack speed. 83 IRGCN fast attack craft, a combination of Siraj-class speedboats, Paykop 2 missile boats, and at least 12 Zulfiqar-class fast attack vessels capable of carrying C-704 anti-ship missiles, began closing on the Bataan Amphibious Ready Group from 4 separate vectors. Vector 1, 22 boats approaching from the northeast, directly from the Iranian coast near Bandar Abbas. Vector 2, 19 boats emerging from the shadow of Qeshm Island to the northwest, attempting to use the island's mass to defeat radar detection until the last possible moment. Vector 3, 24 boats swinging wide to the south, a flanking move designed to force Arleigh Burke to split her defensive attention. Vector 4, 18 boats moving in a direct line toward USS Bataan from the east, a gut punch center formation designed to be the decisive, penetrating force once the escorts were overwhelmed. The tactical geometry was sophisticated. This was not improvised. Someone with genuine naval tactical education had designed this operation, wargamed it, and rehearsed it. The plan relied on one critical assumption: that the U.S. Navy escorts would be overwhelmed by the volume of targets, that the Aegis combat system, as capable as it was, would face more simultaneous threats than it could handle. That, in the confusion, the Paykop 2 boats carrying C-704 missiles would close to within firing range of USS Bataan before a comprehensive defense could be mounted. It was, tactically speaking, a reasonable theory. It was also catastrophically wrong. At 0614 hours and 22 seconds, the exact same moment the IRGCN swarm crossed into international waters, USS Arleigh Burke's commanding officer ordered general quarters. The Aegis combat system was already in full active mode. Understand what Aegis is. The AN/SPY-6 radar array feeding into the Aegis Baseline 9C-2 combat management system does not simply detect threats. It builds a complete, continuously updated three-dimensional tactical picture of the battle space. Every surface contact, every air contact, every subsurface anomaly detected by hull-mounted sonar, and it processes this picture faster than any human operator could comprehend. Within 90 seconds of general quarters, Arleigh Burke had hard tracks on all 83 Iranian surface contacts. Every single one. Named, numbered, classified by threat tier, and assigned to a weapons engagement zone. At 0617 hours, Arleigh Burke established encrypted tactical data link with USS Mahan on the southern picket line and USS Bataan. The common operational picture, the shared tactical display, was now identical on all 3 ships. Everyone was seeing the same picture. Everyone knew where every threat was. Simultaneously, the Bataan's Air Operations Department launched a flight of 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, the Navy's primary naval strike helicopter, equipped with the APS-153 multi-mode radar, forward-looking infrared sensors, and armed with the M197 20mm 3-barrel rotary cannon and AGM-114 Hellfire missiles. The Seahawks climbed to 1,500 feet and began a surveillance orbit over the approaching swarm, feeding real-time targeting data back to the surface picture. Meanwhile, at 06:18 hours, the Electronic Warfare Department aboard Arleigh Burke activated the AN/SLQ-32 V6 shipboard electronic warfare system, also known as the Surface Electronic Warfare Improvement Program, or CWIP Block 3. What CWIP Block 3 does is something the Iranians had not fully accounted for in their planning. It doesn't just jam enemy radar, it identifies, classifies, geolocates, and, most critically, spoofs enemy communication signals. Within 4 minutes of activation, CWIP Block 3 had identified the primary command and control frequency the IRGCN boats were using to coordinate their 4-vector attack.
The system's operators watched the Iranian command net in real time. They could hear the attack being coordinated, and they had the technical capability to insert false information into that network. The decision on whether to do so rested with the commanding officer of USS Arleigh Burke, a decision that would be made in the next 6 minutes. At 06:21 a.m., the situation escalated rapidly. The 12 Zulfiqar-class missile boats in Vector 4, the Center Penetration Force, activated their C-704 anti-ship missile targeting radars. The C-704 is an Iranian-built short-range anti-ship missile with a range of approximately 35 kilometers. It is subsonic, but it carries a 130-kilogram warhead and flies at sea-skimming altitude, making it genuinely dangerous to a surface combatant that is not actively defending. 12 boats, potentially 24 missiles if each boat carried 2 rounds. This changed the threat calculus instantly. This was no longer harassment. This was an active pre-launch targeting sequence. On USS Arleigh Burke's Combat Systems console, the SPY-6 radar's automated threat assessment module upgraded 8 of the 12 Zulfiqar contacts from hostile surface to missile threat, weapons tight. At 06:22 a.m., Arleigh Burke's commanding officer opened the radio circuit to all 3 ships. All stations, this is Arleigh Burke Actual. MCON Alpha is lifted. Switch to Strike Common. Weapons hold unless fired upon. I say again, weapons hold. He was keeping his weapons tight, holding fire, because he understood something critical. Iran wanted an incident. If a U.S. Navy warship fired first, even in legitimate self-defense, the narrative would be controlled by Tehran. Iranian state media would broadcast footage of burning fast boats, Iranian sailors in the water, and a story about American aggression in the Persian Gulf. It would be replayed globally for weeks. The commanding officer of USS Arleigh Burke had no intention of giving Iran that gift. But he was also not going to let 24 anti-ship missiles get airborne. At 06:23 a.m., he issued 2 orders simultaneously. First, the 2 MH-60R Seahawks were cleared to descend to 500 feet and make a show-of-force pass directly over the lead formation of Zulfiqar missile boats, supersonic low pass, M197 cannons hot, Hellfires armed. Second, the electronic warfare team was authorized to transmit on the IRGCN command frequency. At 06:24 and 11 seconds, something extraordinary happened. The SEWIP Block 3 operators aboard Arleigh Burke transmitted a single burst message on the IRGCN's own command and control frequency, in perfect Farsi, using a synthesized voice pattern cloned from the signal characteristics of the IRGCN flotilla commander's own radio transmissions, which had been recorded and processed in under 9 minutes. The message was simple. It told the Southern Flanking Force, Vector 3, the 24 boats swinging wide, that the mission had been compromised, that American submarines had been detected in the area, that the mission commander was ordering an immediate abort and return to base. The message was completely fabricated, but it was delivered in the commander's voice, on the commander's frequency, with the correct authentication protocols that SEWIP Block 3 had decoded from intercepted transmissions. For 47 seconds, the Vector 3 formation slowed, then stopped, then began breaking apart as individual boat commanders tried to raise the flotilla commander for confirmation. What they got back on the frequency was noise, because SEWIP Block 3 was now jamming the confirmation traffic while allowing the false abort order to transmit freely. The Vector 3 formation, 24 boats, began milling in confusion, losing formation cohesion and effectively removing themselves from the tactical equation. In 4 minutes, Iran had lost nearly 30% of its attacking force without a single shot being fired. At 6:26 hours, the two MH-60R Seahawks completed their show of force pass over the Zulfiqar missile boat formation. At 500 feet, 150 knots, with M197 rotary cannons spitting a burst of 20mm fire into the water 200 meters directly ahead of the lead missile boat, the message was unmistakable. 3 of the Zulfiqar boats immediately broke off targeting radar. 2 more began decelerating, but 7 did not. 7 Zulfiqar-class missile boats held their targeting locks. Their C-704 targeting radars remained active, and at 6:28 hours and 43 seconds, USS Arleigh Burke's commanding officer authorized weapons-free on the 7 missile-armed contacts. What happened next lasted exactly 19 seconds. USS Arleigh Burke's Mark 45 5-inch 62 caliber naval gun opened fire at a range of 4,200 meters, placing 3 precision rounds in a tight pattern 50 meters ahead of the lead Zulfiqar missile boat, not into the boat, ahead of it. A final warning shot with the precision of a surgeon and the force of a sledgehammer. Simultaneously, the Mk-15 Phalanx close-in weapon system on USS Bataan spun up to its 4,500 round per minute firing rate and placed a sustained burst of 20mm tungsten rounds in a wall of fire directly across the approach path of the flanking Vector 1 formation, now less than 3 nautical miles from the Bataan's port side. And then, at 6:29 hours, USS Arleigh Burke fired a single RIM-66 Standard Missile 2, SM-2, not at a boat. The SM-2, a surface-to-air missile with a range of over 90 nautical miles, flying at Mach 3.5, was targeted on a ballistic solution that placed its detonation point at exactly 200 meters directly ahead of the lead Zulfiqar missile boat. The warhead detonated at precisely the calculated point. The concussive blast wave hit every boat in the Vector 4 formation simultaneously. No boat was struck, no hull was pierced, but the detonation of a Standard Missile 2 at 200 meters in the open water is an experience that no fast boat crew will soon forget. The lead Zulfiqar boat went dead in the water immediately, engines killed by the pressure wave, crew momentarily incapacitated. The remaining 6 Zulfiqar missile boats broke off their targeting locks and began turning away. The entire Vector 4 formation, the spear point of the Iranian attack, scattered within 90 seconds of the SM-2 detonation. At 06:33 hours, 17 minutes after the IRGCN swarm launched, the Iranian operation began to collapse completely. Vector 4 was broken and scattering south. Vector 3 was still milling in confusion from the false abort order, unable to re-establish coherent communications on their command frequency. Vector 1 had pulled back after the Phalanx demonstration, its lead boats trailing white water as they reversed course. Vector 2, the Keshm Island flanking force, had watched the SM-2 detonation on the horizon and was now in a full-speed retreat back into Iranian territorial waters. At 0633 hours, USS Arleigh Burke broadcast on the International Maritime Distress Frequency, Channel 16, in both English and Farsi. The message was calm, professional, precise. All IRGCN vessels, you are operating in international waters in a manner dangerous to navigation and constituting a threat to United States naval vessels. You are directed to clear the area immediately. Further provocative action will be met with proportional and decisive response. This is your final advisory. No threats, no bravado, no anger in the voice. Just the absolute certainty of a force that has already demonstrated it holds every card in the deck. By 0742 hours, 1 hour and 28 minutes after the swarm launched, all 83 IRGCN vessels had withdrawn to Iranian territorial waters. The Strait of Hormuz was clear. USS Baton, USS Arleigh Burke, and USS Maine continued their transit without further incident. The tanker convoy they were escorting, 14 vessels carrying a combined cargo worth approximately $340 million, passed through the strait on schedule. There is a final element of this operation that the Iranians did not discover until days later, and when they did, it reportedly produced significant alarm at the highest levels of IRGCN Naval Command. Throughout the entire engagement, from 0601 hours to 0742 hours, there was a fourth American asset operating in the Strait of Hormuz. A United States Navy fast attack submarine, USS Cheyenne, SSN 773, a Los Angeles-class boat operating under radio silence, had been positioned in the deep channel of the strait since 2200 hours the previous evening. USS Cheyenne had recorded every element of the Iranian operation. Her passive sonar arrays had tracked every fast attack boat from the moment they left their piers at Bandar Abbas. Her intelligence collection systems had recorded every Iranian radio transmission. And throughout the engagement, she had been tracking the 12 Zulfiqar missile boats with firing solutions calculated and maintained in real time. If a single C-704 missile had left an Iranian launch rail, the Iranians would have had approximately 11 seconds of warning before Mk-48 AD-cap heavyweight torpedoes arrived at their hulls. Iran sent 83 boats into the Strait of Hormuz that morning. They did not know that 83 boats were already being watched by a hunter that they could not see, could not detect, and could not stop.
Let's break down what this engagement revealed, because the tactical lessons here are significant. First, the failure of mass. Iran's entire operational concept rests on the assumption that numbers will overwhelm American defensive systems. Send enough boats, enough threats, enough simultaneous vectors, and something gets through.
What the IRGCN failed to account for is that the Aegis system with Spy-6 radar does not degrade under target saturation the way older radar systems did. The system tracked 83 simultaneous contacts from the first moment they moved. The human operators were never overwhelmed because the machine was never overwhelmed. Second, the decisive role of electronic warfare.
The most elegant element of the American response was not the SM-2 detonation. It was not the phalanx burst or the Seahawk show of force. It was the SWIP Block 3 false abort transmission that removed 24 boats from the engagement before a single round was fired.
Electronic warfare won this battle before the kinetic phase even began. That is the future of naval warfare, and the US Navy is operating at a level of EW sophistication that most of its adversaries have not yet fully reckoned with. Third, the submarine factor.
The presence of USS Cheyenne represents a dimension of this engagement that is impossible to overstate. Iran's fast attack boat doctrine has exactly zero answer to a nuclear-powered attack submarine operating in the deep channel of the strait. The IRGCN boats are fast and numerous, but they are surface vessels optimized for surface operations. They have no organic ASW capability, no hull-mounted sonar, no ability to detect or engage a submarine.
The USS Cheyenne was the loaded gun that Iran could not see, but that the US Navy knew was there the entire time. That asymmetry of knowledge defined the entire engagement. Fourth, discipline and restraint as strategic weapons.
The commanding officer of USS Arleigh Burke made a decision under extreme pressure that demonstrated the highest level of professional military judgment. He held fire for as long as tactically possible, forced Iran to either back down or make the first undeniable act of aggression, and in doing so denied Tehran the propaganda narrative they were hoping to generate. The United States Navy did not escalate this confrontation into a war. It ended it, cleanly, professionally, decisively.
The cost to Iran. One fast attack boat effectively disabled by SM-2 pressure wave, requiring tow and significant repair. Operational security compromised. Their command frequency was broken, cloned, and weaponized against them in under 10 minutes. The strategic failure of their flagship Gray Zone Doctrine exposed and defeated in front of the entire operation's participants, and the quiet knowledge.
Now, spreading through IRGCN naval intelligence that the entire operation was being watched from below by an asset they never detected and could not have stopped.
Iran did not accidentally send 83 boats into the Strait of Hormuz that morning. This was a calculated test, a probe, a gray zone operation designed to measure American resolve, test defensive systems, generate propaganda, and potentially create a political crisis by forcing either American escalation or American retreat. They got neither.
What they got instead was a 4-hour lesson in what 21st century naval warfare looks like when it is executed by the most technologically advanced and professionally disciplined naval force in human history. The message that went back to Tehran that morning was not written in diplomatic cables.
It was written in the electromagnetic spectrum, in the acoustic signatures of a submarine they never knew was there, and in the cold, precise flight path of a single Standard Missile-2 that detonated exactly where the US Navy wanted it to, and not 1 meter closer to any Iranian hull. That is not aggression. That is mastery.
The Strait of Hormuz remains open. The tankers passed through. The energy markets didn't blink. And in a command center somewhere in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, someone is staring at a tactical replay of this engagement and trying to find the moment where it all went wrong.
It went wrong the moment they launched.
If you watched this far, you already know this channel goes deeper than any other military analysis page on YouTube. Here's the question I want you to answer in the comments right now. Do you think Iran will attempt this kind of swarm operation again? Or has the US Navy's response permanently changed the IRGCN's calculus in the Strait of Hormuz? And if Iran does try again, what do you think they change? Drop your tactical analysis below. The best comment gets pinned.
If this video gave you something that the mainstream media didn't, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with one person who needs to understand what real naval power looks like in the 21st century. This is Navy Strike Alert. We'll see you at the next Flashpoint.